It's 11 at night, and Mara is lying in bed with her phone 6 inches from her face. The room is dark except for that pale blue glow. She's not looking for anything in particular, just scrolling the way you do when your thumb moves faster than your brain. And then she sees it. A headline. Not even about her, not really. But it touches something, a value she holds, a group she belongs to, a line she didn't know she'd drawn until someone crossed it. Her chest tightens. Her thumb stops moving. And 9 seconds later, she's typed a comment she will regret for a very long time. We'll get back to that. We'll get back to exactly what those 9 seconds cost her, but not yet. Here's the strange part. Mara didn't choose to feel this way. Not really. Something chose it for her. Something faster than thought, faster than judgment, faster than the part of her brain that usually keeps her out of trouble. And the thing that triggered it wasn't even trying to inform her. It was built, quite deliberately, to make her feel exactly what she felt. This is not a story about people being too sensitive. This is not a story about being too online. This is not a story about willpower or self-control or needing to just put the phone down. This is a story about a system that found the one button in the human brain that overrides everything else and is pressing it on purpose billions of times a day. There's a term for this, rage bait. And once you understand what it actually is, not as a vague complaint, but as a mechanism, you'll never scroll the same way again. So what is rage bait exactly? Strip away the outrage and the moral panic about it. And the definition is almost boring in how simple it is. Rage bait is any piece of content, a headline, a video, a post, engineered specifically to make you angry. Not informed, not entertained, angry. Because anger, it turns out, is the cheapest fuel there is. Here's why. Every platform you use runs on one currency, your attention. And the algorithms behind them don't actually care whether you feel joy or fury. They care whether you stay, whether you tap, whether you comment, whether you share. Those are the actions that keep you on the platform longer, which is the entire business model. And out of every emotion available, anger is the easiest one to manufacture and the most reliable one to spread. It doesn't need nuance. It doesn't need to be true. It just needs to land. Dave found this out the hard way. Dave is 52, runs a small hardware store, and one evening he came across a post about people in his industry that twisted a real, reasonable concern into something cartoonish, an extreme version of a position almost nobody actually holds, dressed up to look like the mainstream view. That's a tactic with a name, the Strawman. Take someone's actual position, inflate it into something indefensible, and now you're not arguing with a person anymore. You're arguing with a monster you built yourself. Dave didn't see the trick. He just saw the monster. 40 minutes later, he'd argued with 6 strangers, missed dinner with his kids, and accomplished exactly nothing except feeling like his blood was simmering under his skin. Here's what most people miss about moments like that. It doesn't feel like falling for a trick. It feels like justice. It feels like finally saying the thing that needed to be said. That feeling has a name too, and it's not a metaphor. It's a measurable event happening inside your skull. Psychologists call it an amygdala hijack. The term comes from Daniel Goleman, who introduced it in his book on emotional intelligence back in the 1990s, and it describes a very specific malfunction. Your amygdala is a small, almond-shaped structure buried deep in your brain, and its entire job is threat detection. Fire, predator, falling rock, react first, think later. The problem is that your amygdala can't tell the difference between a physical threat and an emotional one. A headline that insults something you believe and gets treated with the same urgency as a car swerving into your lane. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux, in research conducted at New York University, mapped out exactly how fast this happens. There's a shortcut in your brain. Researchers sometimes call it the low road, where a threat signal goes straight from your senses to your amygdala, completely bypassing your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reasoning, judgment, and impulse control. By the time the thinking part of your brain even receives the memo, your emotional brain has already reacted. You don't get a vote. Not first, but it gets stranger. This isn't a flaw in your wiring. It's a feature, one that kept your ancestors alive for hundreds of thousands of years. Which brings us to the second mechanism doing the heavy lifting here. It's called negativity bias, and it's the simple evolutionary fact that your brain pays more attention to bad news than good news. Always has. A rustle in the grass that might be a predator gets far more processing power than a flower that might be food. That tilt toward the negative was once the difference between surviving the week and not surviving it. And it never went away, it just moved indoors onto a screen, into a feed. Researchers who've studied online headlines have found something almost uncomfortable in how reliably this plays out. Adding a single negatively charged word to a headline, just one, measurably increases how many people click on it. Not by a small accident of sample size. Consistently, headline after headline. The angrier the framing, the more eyes it pulls in. Outrage isn't an unfortunate side effect of the internet. It's one of the most efficient growth tools anyone has ever built, and it works because of a survival instinct that's older than language. So no, you're not weak for feeling this. You're not naive, and you're not too sensitive. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. The problem is that something on the other side of the screen knows that better than you do. Let's pause on that for 1 second because it matters. Anger, online, is not an accident. It's not a glitch in an otherwise neutral system. It is the product. You're not an angry person who happens to use the internet. You are a person whose anger has been identified, studied, and deliberately triggered again and again. And the moment you see that clearly, you start noticing it everywhere. The headline that's just a little too extreme. The clip that's missing context on purpose. The comment section that feels less like a conversation and more like a trap with bait already in it. If that's landing for you, hit subscribe because we're about to get into exactly how this gets weaponized at scale and what you can actually do about it. Stay with me. Here's the part nobody tells you about what happens after you post the angry comment. You think the story ends there. You typed it, you felt the heat. Maybe you regretted it 5 minutes later. But your brain isn't finished. Because the moment someone likes that comment, replies in agreement, shares it to back you up, your brain releases a hit of dopamine. The same chemical messenger behind almost every reward you've ever chased. And here's the cruel design of it. The anger itself felt bad, but the validation that followed felt good. So your brain, which is relentlessly efficient at pattern matching, quietly files away a lesson that the anger, the posting, the public stand, is how you get rewarded. This is the same mechanism behind a slot machine. You don't know exactly when the next win is coming, which makes you want to keep pulling the lever far more than if you won every single time. Outrage works the same way. You don't know which angry post is going to blow up. Most won't, but the uncertainty is what keeps you posting. Researchers studying compulsive online behavior have pointed to this exact loop. Anger, then validation, then more anger, each cycle reinforcing the last, the same way other compulsive behaviors get reinforced. It's not weakness. It's conditioning. And conditioning doesn't care how smart you are. Now watch what happens next, because this is where it stops being personal and starts being structural. In 2021, internal research from inside one of the world's largest social platforms became public through a series of disclosures reported widely by major news outlets, including the Wall Street Journal. According to that reporting, the company's own researchers had found that content provoking anger and division tended to perform better, get more engagement, travel further, than calmer, more measured content, and that ranking systems had, at points, rewarded exactly that kind of material. We don't need to relitigate every detail of that story here. The point that matters is simpler and far more unsettling. This isn't a conspiracy theory dreamed up by people who dislike social media. It's a pattern serious enough that the platform's own internal data reportedly confirmed it. So if you've ever wondered why your feed seems to serve you the most infuriating version of any topic, the most extreme take, the most divisive framing, here's the part most people miss. It's not because the angriest people are the only ones talking. It's because anger is simply easier for the system to amplify than nuance. Which brings us to how the bait actually gets built. The 3 specific traps used over and over, dressed up differently each time, but structurally identical underneath. The first is the one Dave fell into, the Strawman. Take a real position, distorted into its most extreme, least defensible version. And now the conversation isn't about the actual issue anymore. It's about defeating the cartoon someone built. You can spot it by asking one question. Would the person being argued against actually recognize their own view in this description? Usually, the honest answer is no. The second trap is the false dilemma, the forced choice between exactly two options when reality offers a dozen. You're either fully for this or fully against it. There's no room left for it's complicated, because complicated doesn't generate comments. Complicated doesn't make anyone pick a side and defend it. The false dilemma collapses a messy, three-dimensional issue into a coin flip, and coin flips are what get fought over. The third is the appeal to emotion, leading with a gut-punch image, a tragic anecdote, a provocative phrase, instead of evidence. It's not that emotion is dishonest. Emotion is part of how humans process anything that matters. The manipulation is in using emotion as a replacement for evidence rather than alongside it, skipping the part where you'd actually be persuaded by something true and going straight for the part where you simply react. Here's what ties all three together. None of them are really arguments. They're shortcuts past your reasoning, aimed directly at the same fast, ancient threat system we talked about earlier. The same amygdala that can't tell a real threat from an offensive headline. The Strawman, the false dilemma, the appeal to emotion. Three different doors, same room on the other side. And the room on the other side is the one Mara walked into at 11 o'clock at night. So let's go back to Mara. 11 o'clock. Phone glowing in the dark. The headline that found the exact value she holds and pressed against it. Here's what that comment actually cost her. The post she replied to was shared by someone in a private group she'd been part of for almost 15 years, a friend from college. The kind of friendship that survived 3 cities and 2 divorces and 1 global pandemic. Mara's comment wasn't even about her friend directly. It was about the topic. But it was sharp, and it was public, and it used a tone she'd never have used sitting across a table from someone she loved. Her friend saw it, took it personally because at that volume in that tone it was hard not to. They haven't spoken since. Not a dramatic blow-up. Just a slow, quiet absence where a 15-year friendship used to be. 9 seconds. That's roughly how long it took Mara to read the headline, feel the heat rise, and hit post. 9 seconds against 15 years. Now here's where it gets remarkable, because the same 9 seconds can go a completely different way, and we don't have to guess what that looks like. We can watch it happen. Priya is 21, a college student, and she scrolls into the exact same kind of headline on a Tuesday afternoon between classes. She feels it too. The tightening in her chest, the thumb hovering over the keyboard, the words already forming. But somewhere along the way, Priya picked up 2 small habits, and they buy her just enough time to choose differently. The first is what you could call the 3-second pause. Not a metaphor, a literal pause. When she feels that heat rising, she stops. 3 seconds. 1 breath in, 1 breath out. It sounds almost too small to matter. But remember what's actually happening in her brain during those 3 seconds. That's roughly the window it takes for the signal to travel past the amygdala's fast shortcut and finally reach the prefrontal cortex, the part of her brain that can ask, wait, is this actually true, and does this actually matter to me? Joseph Ledoux's research on that low-road pathway is, in a strange way, the whole reason this works. The amygdala still fires first. It always will. But 3 seconds is enough time for the rest of the brain to catch up and get a vote. The second habit is a simple filter. 3 questions asked silently before her thumb moves. What is this content actually trying to do to me right now? Does reacting to it serve anything that actually matters in my life? And is this information something I genuinely need to act on, or just something designed to make me feel like I do? Most of the time, for most content, the honest answer to all 3 is no. And when the answer is no, there's exactly one move available. Mute it or scroll past it. Not because you don't care about the issue, but because this particular piece of content was never trying to inform you about it in the first place. Priya closes the app. She doesn't post. 20 minutes later, she barely remembers what the headline said. This is not a story about Priya being a better person than Mara. This is not a story about discipline or willpower or some moral high ground one of them reached and the other didn't. This is a story about 3 seconds of biology and whether anything stands in the gap between the spark and the reaction. Because here's the thing about that low road in your brain, the one Ledoux mapped, the one that fires before you've consciously decided anything. It's not going away. It's not a flaw you fix once and never deal with again. It's ancient, it's automatic, and on some level, it's going to fire every single time something threatens a value you hold. The only real variable, the only thing you ever actually get to choose, is what happens in the 3 seconds after. That's not nothing. That's everything. So where does that leave you the next time you feel that familiar heat rising in your chest at 11 at night, or on your lunch break, or standing in line somewhere with 5 minutes to kill? 3 things are worth carrying with you. First, the truth about what just happened to you. That flash of anger you felt reading something online almost certainly wasn't an accident, and it almost certainly wasn't really about you. It was the predictable result of a system that found one of the oldest, fastest circuits in the human brain and learned exactly how to press it over and over at scale. Second, what that means for you specifically. You're not broken, and you are not unusually weak-willed for feeling this. Your amygdala is doing precisely what kept your ancestors alive. The problem was never your wiring. The problem is that something on the other side of the screen understood your wiring better than you did, until now. And third, the part that actually changes something. Every single piece of rage bait you've ever fallen for needed one thing from you to work: speed. It needed you to react before you could think. Which means the most powerful tool you own isn't some grand act of discipline or a total digital detox. It's 3 seconds, 1 pause, 3 questions, and the entire mechanism, built by people who study attention for a living, simply stops working on you. Not forever, just for that one moment. But that one moment is the only moment that was ever actually up for grabs. Mara didn't have that pause built yet. Maybe you didn't either before today. But you do now. So here's the question worth sitting with. Of the 3 traps we talked about, the Strawman, the false dilemma, the appeal to emotion, which one do you think gets you? Personally, more than the others? Tell me below. Because the honest answer to that question is usually the first real step toward never falling for it again. The algorithm is patient. It will wait for the next headline, the next clip, the next perfectly engineered provocation. But it only ever gets 1 shot at you per moment, 9 seconds or 3. And now you know exactly which one you're choosing.